Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, ladies and gentlemen, kia ora and good afternoon. I welcome the Prime Minister and your delegation to Singapore. Prime Minister was in Singapore 6 months ago for the ASEAN meetings, and I'm very glad that she could visit us again so soon, especially since this is such a difficult time for New Zealand. I'd like once again on the record to offer my deepest condolences to the bereaved, friends and families of the victims of the Christchurch attacks. Singapore strongly condemns this atrocity. We stand in solidarity with New Zealand in the fight against terrorism. In fact, the Prime Minister has flown here from Paris, where she and President Macron launched the Christchurch call. This initiative reaffirms the importance of addressing threats posed by terrorism and violent extremism online, and it commits countries and online service providers to work together to tackle them. I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for her leadership in rallying an effective international response to this serious issue. Singapore takes this problem very seriously. We will work with New Zealand, with other countries, and with the online service providers to tackle terrorism and violent extremism. Today marks an important milestone for our two countries. The Prime Minister and I have just signed a joint declaration to establish an enhanced partnership. This will boost cooperation in trade and economics, in security and defense, in science, technology and innovation, and also in our people-to-people links. The negotiations started in April 2017, just over 2 years ago, so I'm very pleased that we've reached a comprehensive and ambitious agreement quite quickly, and if I may say so, a weighty agreement as well, as we can see the documents. Indeed, Singapore and New Zealand are natural partners. There's much warmth, respect, and fondness for each other. We share similar strategic perspectives on the region, such as the importance of ASEAN centrality and an open and inclusive regional architecture. We both believe in trade liberalization and support an open, rules-based international trading system. The New Zealand-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, which we signed in 2000, was Singapore's first bilateral FTA and New Zealand's second bilateral FTA. So we were path breakers. And then we were both initiators of the P4 FTA, together with Brunei and Chile. And the P4 was the seed which eventually grew into the CPTPP, which both our countries have ratified and which is now in force. And we are also currently working closely to conclude the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or the RCEP. So it's not surprising that our bilateral ties are long-standing and multifaceted. Singapore is one of New Zealand's top trading partners and investors, and we have strong research links too. For example, NUS, the NUH system, and A*STAR are collaborating with the Liggins Institute of the University of Auckland on the world's largest nutritional intervention study, a study of pregnant women to reduce the risk of gestational diabetes and improve the health of mothers and their babies. Our defense and security relations are substantial. We cooperate closely under the five-power defense arrangements, the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus, and through peacekeeping operations. We deeply appreciate New Zealand's support for SAF's training at Waiouru, and our people are very familiar with each other, our armed forces, servicemen, but also the public, because we have so many tourists visiting one another. Last year, nearly 62,000 Singaporeans visited New Zealand, while 138,000 New Zealand nationals visited Singapore. And these numbers are bound to grow now that our citizens can use each other's self-processing immigration facilities at our checkpoints. The Prime Minister and I also discussed regional and international developments, of which there are many. I'm happy that we had a meeting of minds on many of these issues. This is a region of growth and opportunity with great potential to be realized. At the same time, it's a region troubled by difficult issues, including extremist terrorism, frictions between the major powers, and regional hotspots. As small countries, we can't determine the course of events, but we will work with each other and with others to resolve problems through dialogue and peaceful means, and to build an open regional architecture which enable all countries to benefit from stability and security while competing and prospering peacefully together. So once again, I'd like to thank Prime Minister Ardern for his support for the enhanced partnership and for our fruitful and warm discussions. Prime Minister.
Thank you. And thank you, Prime Minister Lee, for hosting us here today and for the opportunity to officially mark the conclusion of what has been a genuine enhancement to the relationship that we already have. And it's an incredibly important relationship to us. And I'll repeat what I said again when we began our bilateral meeting, that the condolences that we received from Singapore were swift, warm and genuine and greatly appreciated after the 15th of March. But also the fact that your offer was one not just of support, but very practical in offering any assistance that we may have needed in an experience which was very new to us. So on behalf of the people of New Zealand, I say to you and the people of Singapore, thank you very much. It is a great pleasure to be here in Singapore for what is technically my first official visit, and to launch with Prime Minister Lee the New Zealand-Singapore Enhanced Partnership. As has been said, our countries have a warm and collaborative relationship built on both close historical ties but also shared contemporary interests. Singapore is an incredibly important strategic partner for New Zealand, and that's probably demonstrated by our positions as the first FTA agreement that you signed with us and only our second that we signed then in turn with you. We, of course, also share, though, a much wider ambition to make sure that we collectively continue to promote an open and inclusive and a rules-based region, and that's only becoming more and more important. Singapore's tremendous success offers enormous opportunities for New Zealanders, just as New Zealand's success does for Singaporeans. And we enjoy warm people-to-people ties, which I hope through these agreements will only continue, particularly as Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage. I'm particularly enthusiastic about those ties increasing through arts and culture, but also education and tourism. Singapore is New Zealand's 7th largest trading partner with two-way trade worth $5.2 billion. And today, New Zealand has more free trade agreements with Singapore than any other partner. Again, I think that says something about both of our values. Singapore is also one of our largest foreign investors and a significant source of tourists. In short, Singapore is a valuable and also natural partner for us. Today's announcement, though, marks the result of significant work, but it also marks a significant step up in our relationship. And I believe will make sure that our partnership remains contemporary and that it's also acknowledging the changing economic dynamic that we're working within. It does mark the result of 3 years worth of work between Singapore and New Zealand and delivers an important and substantive lift of our cooperation in trade, science, innovation, security, defence, civil service cooperation. And I think it also demonstrates the value of taking an open and comprehensive and engaged and rules-based approach to the ways in which countries can relate to each other. And we talked a little bit about trying to exemplify that through the agreements that we've reached together. So amongst other elements, the enhanced partnership includes an upgrade of our free trade agreement, the closer economic partnership, which smooths the way for New Zealand companies to capitalise on opportunities in Singapore, a science and technology and innovation arrangement that will link both countries' science and innovation systems, and that partnership is supported by funding for joint research, which totals $57 million. Stronger people-to-people ties and support of tourism, business and education, and that has been very, very practical side of the arrangement. Ultimately, though, I hope it demonstrates that New Zealand is open for business and welcomes Singaporean business and investment and an exchange of people and ideas. I am confident that our relationship will continue to go from strength to strength as two open, dynamic, if I can say that about ourselves, pragmatic innovative countries, and that we collectively, I hope, will continue to make a difference in our region and internationally in our own small way.
Thank
Kia
you.
ora koutou katoa.
Thank you.
Prime Ministers. Now we'll open the floor to the media. May I invite the first question from Singapore, Deborah Wong from CNA.
Hi, good morning, Prime Ministers.
Hi.
So this question is for the both of you. This enhanced partnership covers a broad range of initiatives from defense all the way to trade. And with the ongoing US-China trade war, how much of this will mitigate slowing economic growth, seeing that both New Zealand and Singapore are small economies? And as well, on the defense front, how will this serve to inform New Zealand's and Singapore's responses in the face of terrorism? This is also in light of the recent attacks in Christchurch. Thank you.
Well, perhaps I'll go first.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think the impact of the trade frictions between the major powers, particularly America and China, will be significant on us because we are small, we are open, and we are heavily dependent on international trade. And we both rely on free trade as well as a rules-based international order. The enhanced partnership will grow our bilateral trade, I hope, I'm sure it will. In fact, the bilateral trade has been growing quite nicely. Last year it's gone up by 12%. But we have to recognize that both New Zealand and Singapore are small countries. And therefore, the relative part of our bilateral trade and our overall international trade is quite small. So it will be a very useful contribution, but quantitatively, it will be a modest one. But I think more important than the quantitative contribution will be that the enhanced partnership shows that we are cooperating and we are promoting economic integration and trade at a time when these basic concepts are being questioned and, in fact, under threat. And I hope that it will encourage others to go forth and do similar things. I know many countries are looking for ways forward to ensure that they do not give up the hard-won gains in terms of the prosperity, the mutual interdependence, and therefore mutual gains from the trade. And this is one step in the right direction. In terms of defense and security, the enhanced partnership talks about several things: annualizing the defense ministers' meeting, establishing talks, Air Force to Air Force, a security and intelligence dialogue, cyber cooperation, professional exchanges. And these will establish an ongoing set of links and interactions which will serve us well when we deal with terrorism. Because in terrorism, we're exchanging intelligence, we're exchanging perceptions, assessments of what's happening, we're exchanging techniques, know-how, how we can tackle terrorism, how we can deal with the threat of extremist radical views. And the regular exchanges will help us to do that better.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I would absolutely agree. And this particularly, in a world where we are both observers and countries impacted by global trade tensions, it's now more important than ever that we continue to model and demonstrate the benefits of free and open trading relationships, but also a rules-based order, because there's no question that the knock-on effects are significant when we see the erosion of that. And I hope that by continuing to modernise our free trade agreements as we have done here, we can demonstrate that we can keep pace, that we can make sure that our businesses benefit from countries that are being agile and making sure that their free trade agreements are mirroring the changing environment that they're working in. So particularly around digital aspects of trade. So that's modelling that behaviour, I think, is actually incredibly important for us. But also making sure that we continue to build resilience by being a trading nation that diversifies its trading partners. And so CPTPP has, I think, demonstrated its value and its worth for those who are party to it. And again, is another way of endorsing the importance of a rules-based order and rules-based trade.
Thank you. Derek Ching from New Zealand Herald.
My question is around the Christchurch call to action, which aims to eliminate objectionable content online, but also preserving free speech and an open, secure internet. Singapore has just passed a law giving the government power to ban disinformation from online platforms. And Canada, which also just signed the agreement in Paris, is considering fining social media platforms if they can't stop fake news. So my question was to Prime Minister Ardern, do you foresee the call to action as also looking at the issue of online fake news and disinformation? And if not, what do you think of the law that's just been passed in Singapore? And to Prime Minister Lee, do you support the principles behind the Christchurch call to action? And do you believe that this law Singapore has just passed is consistent with the principles of free speech and an open, secure internet?
The Christchurch call to action is narrowly defined for good reason. The experience that New Zealand had on the 15th of March was one that was designed to spread online, and in that regard, it was successful. Although there was a relatively small number of people who viewed the live-streamed attack, it was shared on Facebook, for instance, 1.5 million times, or at least that was the number of times it was removed. On YouTube in the first 24 hours, it was uploaded at a rate of once per second. We felt a strong duty of care in the aftermath of the 15th of March to try and prevent that kind of situation ever happening again. Our starting point has been to target violent extremism and terrorism online. And so the call is very focused on that. It talks about eliminating that content and also preventing that kind of content from proliferating. It does take us a step beyond that when it comes to countries' obligations, though, because it does talk about ensuring the resilience of our communities and our societies against moving into violent extremism. But it is, as a call, very much focused on that, rather than what I hear, the wider debate around misinformation and so on.
I think we are tackling different aspects of a big problem. The Christchurch call deals with extremist content. It may or may not be false, it may be true. Then the terrorist live streamed his actions in Christchurch. It was not falsehood, it was true, but it was bad. And you have to find ways to prevent that from being circulating. And I don't see that as being against free speech. Our legislation is prevention of falsehood and misleading information online, online falsehoods and misinformation. And it doesn't cover what the Christchurch shooter did, but it covers a serious problem when people put up something which is untrue and which can circulate very rapidly if it's not contradicted and rebutted and demolished, and which can cause a lot of harm within hours, if not minutes, and therefore requires an immediate response. And that's how our legislation has been crafted. I don't see our legislation as being in any way restrictive of free speech. There are always rules on what you're allowed to do in terms of freedom of speech, because no free speech is absolute, and the legislation we have passed doesn't prevent you from saying things. What it does is to say, if you want to say that, you put up a correction so that people will know the facts. And if you disagree with that, you go to the court, and there's a process, and the court will decide whether this is a fact, whether it's true, whether it's misleading, whether in fact it is in the public interest that this be taken down or be corrected, and the court will decide. So I see this as a practical arrangement which will help us to tackle the problem. I'm under no illusions that it will solve our problem, because it's a very difficult problem to deal with. And even if we can put out corrections, the truth runs not so fast as the falsehoods. But we have to do this, and it is a step in the right direction.
Thank you, PM. Adrian Lim, Straits Times.
Good afternoon, Prime Ministers. There had been a long-time discussion for the Singapore Air Force to train and have a fighter detachment in New Zealand. However, this plan was scrapped earlier this year. So I would like to ask what plans are there, if any, to have more training areas or training arrangements between the two countries?
We have a very good defense relationship with New Zealand. We've had a long history of operational and training cooperation. We've had joint exercises. We've gone on operational missions together, UN missions, peacekeeping, the Defeat ISIS Coalition. We're both participating. We have SAF training, particularly Army training in Waiuru in the training area. Many years ago, I participated in one of the first exercises in Waiuru. This was 1978. I haven't been back since, but I imagine...
I think we've upgraded some of our equipment since then.
But the Tongariro volcano probably looks the same.
Yes.
So that was a good experience for me, and generations of SAF servicemen have had that experience since. And we deeply appreciate New Zealand's support for our training there and the very warm reception we get when we are there. We also appreciate New Zealand's support for assessing the feasibility of a long-term fighter training detachment at Ohakia. I think both sides, after looking at the issues, have mutually agreed not to proceed with the proposal, but we'll continue to explore new opportunities to cooperate on defense and security. There will be many.
Agreed. And we appreciated the opportunity to go through that process alongside Singapore. But as the Prime Minister has said, regardless, our defence connections and relationship remains one of our most significant in the region. And I only see that continuing. In fact, I think today with the agreement we've signed, the acknowledgement that actually some of the threats we face are dynamic and changing, and so the addition of cybersecurity dialogue, I think is actually a really important additional element to that defence relationship.
All right.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the joint press conference. The Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern and Prime Minister Lee will now take their leave.